Well, hello. I've read a book. It is a new book, new November 2023. It's a library book again. It is called Blood in the Machine, and it's by Brian Merchant, best-selling author of The One Device, The Origins of the Rebellion Against Big Tech. Well, I like me some rebellion. You notice I'm always reading books about power. I think I'm interested in power, in this person's power over here as opposed to that person's power over there, that they got no power and they got to get the power from this person and they're not giving it up, and so they fight, and. So I think that's a kind of a theme that's running through my interest here and the books that I choose to pick up and read. I mean, there's some sort of reason why all these books end up being kind of the same thing. Anyway, this one I thought was really good. I really enjoyed this book. It taught me a lot about history because it's basically what it is. It's the history of the textile industry in Britain, in Great Britain, in England, in the beginning of the 1800s. So we're talking about the 18th and 19th centuries. I always get screwed up with the century. I think they should have named the centuries after the century. Like, this is this is the last. Wait a minute. The 20th century was that was the 19th. Yeah, that's the thing. The 20th century was the 19th. This is the 21st century, only it's really 20. And then the 18th century is the 1800s are the 19th century. So, I get a little confused. But anyway, the book takes place in Britain in around 1800. That's what we're talking about here. So around 1800, and what's going on is entrepreneurs. Back in these days, we're coming kind of out of the Middle Ages into the Industrial Revolution, and actually the picture he presents of what was going on before this machines and before these entrepreneurs bring the machines in and all the factory work starts, he paints kind of a pleasanter picture of what was going on for working people back then. So there was this big textile thing already going on in England, mostly wool. And the wool was it was done in homes. So people would spin in their home, and they would have other machines to do the other processes of weaving and so forth in their home, and then present them, sell them to someone or something. And anyway, they got to live at home. And they could work their own hours and do things on their own, be with their families, not get shipped off into this, prison-like facility, which was what these giant mills that they built were like. And they didn't want to go into these mills. This is the story of the Luddites. This is the people who fought the machine under the name of King Lud, or General Lud, who was the symbol of the Luddites. So, and this is all right around the area of like Nottingham, with the same area where Robin Hood was. So it becomes a sort of other legend of this King Lud is this sort of, a people's figure, like Robin Hood, who robbed from the rich and gave to the poor. Well, the Luddites used the black hammer, blacksmith's hammer, and went in and smashed the machines that these entrepreneurs were bringing in and creating these shops. What would go on is that he tells us, Binko, is, I think is Robert Binko. He tells the story in the book of one particular young child who was out of an orphanage, basically sold to a mill owner as an apprentice. So what you got to do then as a 7-year-old apprentice was work all your childhood as an apprentice for nothing other than, you know, whatever they wanted to give you as far as housing and food. And you worked, you know, 15 hours a day, whatever they wanted, for nothing. So it's, you know, slavery. So that's what the machines were bringing in to this world that these people did not like, the Luddites. And the Luddites was a secret organization. They had this oath that they made, and you know, if you tell, you're basically going to die. Was what it went on, what the oath was, and ultimately they were not horribly violent as far as attacking other people. Toward the end of things, there is this one murder of this one guy who was, you know, very adamant about having being an entrepreneur and bringing these, you know, these people knew what they were doing. They knew they were creating wealth for themselves by impoverishing the everybody else, but that was okay, you know. So because this was progress, it was put in the name of progress. Now the Luddites is given were coming down from us. You know, when you hear about a Luddite, that means that references, you know, in popular nomenclature today, it means someone who is anti-technology. And that is not really valid because Luddites are not anti-technology. I'm a Luddite. There are certain technologies I do not like, I do not become involved in, you know, and very common ones actually, like automobiles. I don't like to ride in automobiles. That's why I live in the city and take public transit. I don't like riding around in automobiles. I feel kind of foolish. If I'm driving when I feel foolish, I feel like, you know, now I am supposed to drive this machine where I could be riding on a train, you know, reading a book or something, you know. So, so Luddites, these Luddites back then in 1800 Nottingham, were not anti-technology. They just didn't want their jobs being stolen away from them by this advance in technology and the factory system and the child labor. I mean, it was, you know, there's 3-4 things going on here at the same time. Now, a lot of stuff going on in this book, and I really learned a lot, and you really should read the book if you want to get what is in the book, because I can't tell you what's in the book. The book runs, you know, whatever, 300 and 400 pages. So I can't really tell you what is in the book. I can tell you that it's a really good book and that I really liked it. And I can give you a smattering of what my brain regurgitates from it in this sort of impromptu fashion. So, so I don't know. Yeah, okay, so the Luddites were not against technology. They were against the specifics of this machinery. Now, also in the book, he has a lot of stuff about what was going on around that time in general. Like they're still fighting Napoleon, so so you know, they have armies wealth of the nation is being also drained by fighting Napoleon. And by 1812, there becomes another war with America. So these wars are rather costly. I mean, maybe if you're in the United States, maybe you're aware that the kind of the wars that we've been involved with in the 2021s, the 21st century, the 2020s, the 21st century here are costing the United States a whole lot of money, but enriching the people who make the weapons. So it's okay because basically it's the economy of the country. And yeah, these wars cost a lot of money, and then you're sending the boys off to die, and he doesn't take us to the front here. He stays in England in the book. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on. It introduces a lot of personalities too, including several of the Luddites themselves. A lot of the source of this stuff was from this book, this novel that came out almost 100 years later called Ben O. Bills. And there's some points along in the book where I went, maybe I should be reading Benno Bills instead of this, because he would bring stuff out of Benno Bills and say, well, it might have been fictionalized a little bit, but it was basically what was going on. So yeah, so Benno Bills, and as that I told you about the child labor, this Robert Benko or whatever his name was guy. There's also a memoir about his life that apparently a lot of the information in the book came from. So yeah, he introduces a lot of things about the scene at the time. We visit with William Godwin and Mary Wollstonecraft. Is that the name? These are the parents of one Mary Godwin, who and we are introduced to also Lord Byron, and also to Percy Bysshe Shelley, who was ultimately married to Mary Godwin, although he was already, they took up with one another when he was already married to someone else. So these are the romantic poets of the day. And so he goes into more stuff about Mary Godwin, who, of course, became Mary Shelley and wrote, this incredible, amazing novel of Frankenstein, the Modern Prometheus, that came out in 1818, which is right around this period. And Brian Merchant in the book connects these two and says, a lot of what's going on in Frankenstein with the hubris of the Dr. Frankenstein in creating life or reanimating life or whatever's going on here is really informed by this entrepreneurial spirit of the times and the battles going on with all that. And of course, that also converges with a lot of stuff that's in one of my favorite novels that I keep talking about all the time. That is Theodore Roszak's The Memoirs of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which I think is just really a great novel, and talks about this point where science and knowledge and male life, patriarchy, is really coming in, whereas the natural sort of female tone of a more nature, I guess, pagan kind of feel is being destroyed, actually, when they're burning witches and stuff like that. So so yeah, he ends up talking about Frankenstein somewhat, and comments about the 1931 film that Boris Karloff plays a simp and the monster in the creature that is created in the book is not a simp. He's a one smart guy who's in a horrible predicament and forced into violence by this strange technological setup that he's been thrust into, which converges with the Luddites, forced into this situation by having to starve, basically. People were starving around this time because they were being forced out of work by these machines. Another element that's going on in here that's quite interesting is that cotton is rising now. When I told you earlier that it was mostly wool was the source fabric, cotton was coming in strong during this time in the early 1800s from India. Partly because of all this colonialism, the colonialism that was going on, with Britain, and of course I don't even know when they were doing all their stuff in India, but maybe I'll find that out later as I keep reading stuff. But he talks about the cotton coming from America, and lots of it, that are being produced by these slaves, and it all kind of drives each other, like the mill stuff and the all this fabric they were creating out of cotton in these mills, mechanized mills in England, was being fed by the slavery in the South in America, where they had to have more and more slaves to make more and more cotton, pick more and more cotton. So it's all connected. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about with this? I know a little about this mill sort of life. My father was a steel worker. I'm from northeastern Ohio, which back then had a lot of steel mills, and they made the steel that went into the automobiles into Detroit and whatever else. So my father worked in a steel mill all through my young childhood and through high school, and he would work swing shifts. So one week he would work days, the next week he would go in the afternoon, and the week after that he would go in at midnight. And this schedule kept shifting for years. So I don't know how he managed to do that. I think they took some stimulants along the way, but yeah. So I'm basically a mill kid, and I kind of ran away. I didn't really want to end up in the steel mill myself because I didn't go to college, and I could have gotten into the steel mill probably. I know some people who did that, who are actually a little younger than me and have retired already from careers there, and have houses and things like that, where I led this sort of runaway bohemian escaped slave lifestyle where nothing much went on, but I didn't get captured, let's put it that way. Yes. And Lord Byron, of course I'd known him as a poet and read some of his poetry, but he was actually a lord, of course, so he was capable of going to Parliament and addressing the House of Lords, which he did, advocating for the Luddites. So he was a supporter of the Luddites, and that helped to give the Luddites some kind of a profile of something that, of course, the government kept changing the rules often for their entrepreneurs. There was a combination law. You could not have a union that was called that would be illegal in this combination law, the combination of workers. But there was situations where the entrepreneurs combined to decide what to do together, and that's not fair. The book has some illustrations throughout the volume, and so that's nice. And I actually, this is kind of a heavy book. I'm cat sitting on Monday, and I was like, a couple days ago, I was on page 100, and I'm like, I want to get this done so I don't have to take it to the cat sit place uptown. Like I have to take a bunch of stuff with me, my stuff, for when I go. Like I have this guitar and things. I didn't want to take the book, so I listened to most of the remainder. After the first 100 pages, I listened to the audiobook version, and the reader is really good. It was a nice read, and it's a really interesting story and fascinating book. And he did a really good job of putting it all together. He brings it to now. When it talks about automation, eliminating jobs, and AI some, and all that. But another thing that I've been listening to, I listen to podcasts, and today I was listening to one, the Sheer Intelligence, and also the Ralph Nader. I listened to podcasts of people who are like 90 years old. They're the hosts. So Ralph Nader podcast had this author, Les Leopold, and he has written a book about Wall Street, and how Wall Street is impoverished, is causing us into poverty. And that is, in the course of this discussion that fits in with this, it's not the automation that's the problem, or that it's that the whole structure of the rules of Wall Street were changed by lovely Bill Clinton. I was trying to think of something nasty to say and describing Bill Clinton, but maybe you know what he is. But he, helped deregulate all this Wall Street stuff. And one issue is that they could only buy back like 2% of their profits. They could use to buy back their stock, which they do to enrich the price of the stock, to make it more more valuable, which makes the owners of the stock, like CEOs and stuff, like billionaires basically. So that is what is causing so much problems. That is what has caused people to vacate the Democratic Party, because they've been so involved with this, letting Wall Street run rampant. And what they're doing is they're buying back their stock, and and to do that, they sell the assets of the companies. They lay off people. They'll buy, these private equity firms. I was just listening to another thing about that. Private equity, they buy things with no money, and then in order to pay for them, they lay off a bunch of people, so the company is more profitable. Anyway, all these maneuvers. And then Hillary Clinton comes up years later and says, "Oh, you want to get out of, you're not supporting me and the Democratic Party. Well, your husband ruined our livelihoods with his NAFTA and his allowing them to do these buybacks, and allowing Wall Street to go off its nut, as well as starting to put NATO and all these Eastern European countries, and causing all these problems." And it's like, we're not going to vote for you. And then she calls us deplorables and racist. And the working class Americans are not racist. They're actually quite liberal. They just don't like the being screwed over by Wall Street and these investors, and these people like the Clintons are in bed with, basically, when he's not getting serviced by his apprentices. Yeah. that sort of fits. So anyway, sorry about my rant. I always do these rants, don't I? Blood in the Machine. It's really a good book. I heard about this book because I listened to a podcast called Team Human by Douglas Rushkoff, and he had him on, and so I just got into my little computer and asked the library for the book, and it came like right away because, you know, people aren't reading these books, which is unfortunate because there's lots of stuff to learn, and you know, you kind of get more out of it than, you know, I don't know, the Squid Game or whatever. So I guess that's me being a little bit working class snobby in that sense, but yeah, that's kind of the sort of guy I am. So sorry. So, Blood in the Machine. Damn good book. Go ahead and read it. Or don't. Oh, like and subscribe.